model engineers. My name is Doug, and it is great to be back in the cockpit again and rocking and rolling with Dragula, episode 5, where we refine the design that we worked on last week. Well, as I've told you before, I'm going to share my successes and my failures with you as well. And I kind of think that what we built last week was not really where we needed to be. Take a look at the different diameters of the brass. I decided that it was kind of a flexible flyer. There was way too much flex in this design. So we're going to do this chassis over again, and we're going to gussy it up a little bit to make sure that it is really sturdy. We're going to put the guide flag on a wheelie bar, and we're going to resolder with 6040 leaded solder instead of the unleaded solder that we used last week. I tell you what, guys, lead, it may not be good for you, but it is great for solder and great for building slot cars. Unleaded stuff, I really wasn't even aware last week that I was using the unleaded, and it was just a little difficult to get the stuff to stick. So I ordered a new batch of 6040 solder. You'll notice here as we solder today, there's a world of difference. If you remember from past episodes, I have a whole bag of different cutoffs from different sizes of tubing, and it comes in really handy for building these chassis because I have quite a selection of diameters to use. We're going to pick something out here. This is K&S stock. I have some different sizes that slide inside of each other. This is going to come in very handy when we go to create this wheelie bar. The outer tubing is 3mm stock. Look how beautifully it telescopes in and out. Now I've created a sketch. Remember, I sketch up just about everything before I bend just to make sure it's exactly what I need. We're first going to take this 4/0 steel wool and polish everything up. It's just a little bit easier that way when it's a long piece than when it's a tiny one. I usually choose to deburr and sand before I get down to soldering the whole piece. It just seems to work out a little bit better that way. Since these are going to be telescoping little parts, I have to make sure that they're very smooth on the inside as well. Now, here's a little jewelry tool that I picked up. It's kind of a combination of a pair of pliers and a ring mandrel. The larger you go in diameters of wire, the more something like this tool really comes in handy. You can use your power and have extreme control over these bends. Remember, when you bend brass, it not only bends in one direction, it can bend 360. So a flat surface is your friend here. And as you see, I put it against a straight edge to make sure that those bends are at 90 degrees. And don't be embarrassed if you have to fiddle it a little bit, because that's just the battlefield in which we're deployed. Now, when you buy one of these pen boards, over and over, you're going to be very thankful that you have one. It really helps you to keep things in the proper order, because a blowtorch can literally blow, that's why they call it a blowtorch, it can blow your part off of the stand if it's not pinned down. Well, this joint here is the last one that I did with that non-leaded solder, and I decided to call it quits because it is so difficult to get this stuff to stick, even when you properly prepare your brass. Here's the part where we talk about butt joints. Normally I try to get pieces of wire to have more than one connection, but in this case, a butt joint is perfect. As you see, we take the wheelie bar, and there are a couple of rings of material. This is the part that's telescoping around that original bent piece of wire, and that is going to make a really, really nice pivot point for us. Now, when you're using the pins, don't be afraid to count the different holes in this porcelain pin board, because, hey, we're not going to judge you. We're all friends here. If you count them, you're going to make sure that all of your pins are in the same place on the right side and on the left side, and things stay pretty square that way. Oh, here comes the happy part of this romantic comedy. Look how easily the solder just flows onto the part and hardens. Man, it's just beautiful. Since I made the decision to increase the diameter of the wire that we're using with the motor mount, the holes aren't quite big enough. So I drilled a larger hole, which is slightly bigger than the diameter of the wire, which is fine because we're going to put a little extra solder on there just to make sure that it fills in those gaps. And don't worry, we're going to sand that off so it fits the motor perfectly. Whoa, now you can warm your hands over the steam as it rises. I tell you what, when you're using a torch with this instead of a soldering iron, first of all, I think you get much smoother joints, but it also makes this thing really, really hot. And if you don't spray it down, you're going to have to wait a few minutes before you touch it, unless, of course, you want to get filleted phalanges. Not recommended. I find this extruded aluminum miter box really helpful. It makes sure that you get a 90-degree cut. And, if you're going to be using a rotary tool with one of those little cut-off extensions, they work really fast, they work really well, but they're kind of hazardous. If they decide they're going to explode on you, you better make sure that you have some safety glasses on because they could blind you. Now you can see the reason why I test fit all this before I started putting it all together. You can see you have enough clearance for that guide flag, and everything fits. Well, now is the time to make your move. If you like this kind of content, make sure you leave a like and be sure to subscribe. We'll see you next week.